What's happening, family? It is your man, CRB Jr., Courtney Robert Brown Jr. here at Big Boss Filmworks, Motown Mafia podcast production. To my left is my brother, my partner, Lewis. What's up, bro?
Man.
Talk to the fam.
Doing good. How's everybody?
Everything good this Halloween?
I know, right? Trick or treat.
Trick or treat. Give me
Heavy
some.
on the tricks.
Yeah, Pops used to always talk about the growing up, the trick or treat bandits. Yeah, story of his man back in the day was running a spot.
Okay.
And niggas came with the mask and the candy. So he used to always be growing up, be like, nigga, boy, watch out for the trick or treat bandits.
Oh, yeah.
Which leads to that scene.
Well, in the scene in Motown Mafia, the award-winning documentary, where Mr. Brown reaches down in the hand
why he used to keep the pistol at the end of at the bottom of the Halloween bag of candy.
There you go.
See, that come from his man, the trick or treat bandits.
Them trick or treat bandits gotta watch it.
You gotta watch the trick or treat bandits. So yeah, we hope everybody is good out there, family. And so before we get started, you guys, we appreciate the growth of the channel and all of the above.
Thanks a million.
So make sure you guys are hitting that like, share, and subscribe button, and the notification button, right?
And the notification bell.
Yeah, so you
smash it.
We got a lot of hot stuff coming. Just dropped a lot of new content, and a lot going on at Big Boss Filmworks nowadays, Lewis.
Big time.
But yeah, man. So I think you're aware that Dame Dash had announced two things: that he's doing his Honor Up Part 2.
Okay.
And that he was starting the pre-production for Paid in Full Part 2.
Oh yeah, the new Paid in Full. Oh yeah, it takes place in DC.
Well, I think so that's what we're going to talk about. There's a gentleman by the name of Ears to Christ. You guys who follow this kind of stuff have probably seen him on. He's got a lot of YouTube stuff. He's been on Vlad TV. This is the great question in this urban genre now that it's become so mainstream and everybody's doing movies. Is obviously the original Paid in Full has become a
timeless classic.
Classic, right?
Right.
The Rich Porter Alpo AZ story is legend. So the question is that this guy, Ears to Christ, and we're going to go into his story a little bit and why he thinks if there is a Paid in Full Part 2 that it has to be DC based.
Okay.
And how he would be pretty much one of the main characters in this, and he's got some plans also to work on I think the project, he said if he didn't link up with Dame Dash and they did something together, that he would do like a fully paid, which would be the DC version. So the way the story goes, Lewis, this is like early and mid 80s. DC is, by the mid 80s, is really becoming a murder capital and crack capital of America. Or one of them.
All right.
So there's a gentleman by the name, his street name is Ears to Christ. He hooks up with a guy who's a little bit older than him, a guy by the name of Andre Johnson, aka his name is Tank. And again, I really like this guy's Ears to Christ. I'm always a sucker for guys who talk slick, but really are about their business. And he seems to really be one of those kind of guys that, even though he talk kind of slick and he talk crazy a little bit, but he is who he is.
Gotcha.
I could have seen myself giving him some work. Or telling the old man, Pops, this is a good guy. I know nigga a little bit crazy.
Right.
But he gonna pay his ticket. He's serious about his business. And I don't think we got to worry about nobody taking our shit if he holding it.
Right.
He seems to be a kind of gentleman. I really enjoy his content when he does it. So you got this guy, Ears to Christ, hooks up with this guy by the name of Andre Johnson, R.I.P. now actually, whose street name was Tank.
Okay.
Their story is very much just like, whether it's the story of mobsters Lucky Luciano and Meyer Lansky when they were young, poor kids growing up in the ghettos of New York, the Jewish and Italian ghettos of New York. Or
Okay.
Eddie Jackson and Courtney Brown growing up in Black Bottom in a somewhat economically challenged environment. And, you know, there's always that common thread in these kind of stories.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Young men coming in financially challenging situations look for ways to change their situation.
Yeah.
So they start off being enterprising young men with petty crime, as often do. Most hustlers start off as small criminals before they become big criminals. Their thing was they had stolen all of the keys to all like the vending machines and soda machines. They had rolled the custodian, like the head custodian at the school.
Okay.
And they took the master keys.
Okay.
So they had access to all the vending machines and video games. So that was like their first hustle, right?
Okay.
And they become quarter kingpins. They have all the quarters in the world because they're emptying out the vending machines and popping, right? They progress from that to it's really a DC phenomenon. I don't know if you're familiar with in DC PCP. They call Love Boat. PCP was a big, and all my
This isn't like Angel Dust.
Yeah, Angel Dust. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm familiar.
DC's the only town I really ever knew where black people, I should say, really were into it.
Okay.
But that was always a thing because that was like during my college days and when we would visit or friends would visit Howard University and things. And
so is this the early 80s?
This is like the early 80s.
Okay.
But I think that PCP or Love Boat or Angel Dust had been big in DC since maybe the 60s. But like here in Detroit, you just never heard about people. I mean, maybe some white kids.
I vaguely remember, and this is, the big anti-drug campaign from the early 80s. I'm giving away my age, but I was in elementary school and we would see different like terrifying videos and so on and so forth, and they told us to stay away from that angel dust. I mean, in fact, Gil Scott-Heron had a song called Angel Dust.
What?
Yeah, it was around that time. It was like 1980, maybe 1979.
Okay. So right, I think this is like early 80s that this Andre Johnson and Ears to Christ are kids, and they're starting to peddle this angel dust.
Okay.
They make themselves a little money. They have some little tragedy where their stash gets compromised, and they're out of the angel dust business. But as powdered cocaine was beginning to really enter America, this is still the transition over from the disco era where powdered coke had really become was still kind of expensive. So the main masses of people still were not, but the price was beginning to fall a little bit, and it was not just a drug for the elite.
This is like around that Richard Pryor freebase time.
A little bit of that. That's right. So there is no such word as crack yet.
Right.
So they talk about, he talks about how they then transitioned from the PCP thing into the powdered cocaine business. And it recalled me to a story I think we've told on the station before, that me and Eddie Jr., our friend, shout out to the big homie out there.
Yeah, what up?
The big homie gave me and Big a bag, and this is Highland Park era, so this is like 86.
Okay.
Yeah, like 86. And we took it over to, shout out to Scotty D. We were at Jabba the Hutt. Shout out to Trace. Shout out to Jabba the Hutt. Love your comments, Hutt. And when Eddie Jr., when Eddie Baby gives the bag to Scott, Scott says, man, really, people don't want powder no more. Everybody cooking it up. And it was such it struck me, and I was like,
so that term was completely new to you, cooking it up.
I mean, I had heard it, but it was,
right. It was
the fact that they already, he had a better pulse on the street, because we were buying powder from Cascade
Okay.
Fives people was over there on Cascade, and
Mm-hmm.
then we had been and since I had met Pep and them in 84, 85, I mean, Powder was all around,
Right.
and it was what people in the in crowd was doing.
Yeah, I mean,
but,
it was the elitist.
but about that time, 86, and here in Detroit. So I'm trying to draw the parallel. None of this stuff happens in a vacuum.
No.
So as people were starting to transition from powder to cooking it up in Detroit, that phenomenon, give or take a couple months, was happening everywhere. Places like New York might have been a little bit ahead of the curve.
Mm-hmm.
L.A. a little bit ahead. I mean, maybe L.A. or the Bay Area might have been really ahead of the curve. But anyway, as the natural progression of the normal urban hustler in this era goes, it went from powder cocaine, and then people started cooking it up and they started smoking it.
Right.
What we now know is crack, but again, that term had not even come out yet.
Okay.
Then they start smoking crack. They start selling crack, rather. Let me clean that up. These guys, what I think was very impressive about them, they did not seem to be users at all.
Okay.
These two
right about the money.
These two young men were very much about the money.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he talks, Here's the Christ talks about a couple of the edicts that his man, Dre, who was kind of the leader of the two, would scold people in their crew if they talked bad or called people crackheads or dope fiends. And he was like, they're people, man, and they're our customers, and you people should treat them right. And I was like, wow, that
sounds very familiar.
Sounds like he had read the Eddie Jackson play that, these are human beings, man, and there's no reason. We're making money, and they're the people spending money with us, and there's no reason to, degrade them.
That's right.
And he, it's a great couple good stories, anecdotes how he would pay the people who were addicted to clean up the neighborhood and things like that, so that it was at least somewhat of a win-win situation. They move up the ranks, as again happens in these kind of stories. Years to Christ and his man Andre Tank Johnson. First time there was a big phenomenon. So of course, this is, if you read the Crack Era by Kevin Childs, he ended up having a stint where a lot of the big fellas, Kevin moved his operation down to D.C. Of course, Alpo Martinez started coming down to D.C. And there was always a lot of the reason why the homicide rate in D.C. spiked.
Okay.
Had a lot to do with so many guys from New York coming down there and all of the street politics
Bringing the funk.
that ended up pursuing. So they move up. They get a connect from these guys in Brooklyn. They eventually outgrow them. They hook up with another guy by the name of Kurt Bones, whose acronym was CB. He's also been chronicled on Vlad and a few other platforms to cover this kind of stuff. He had a pretty interesting story too. I had to do a little more research on Mr. Bones, really talk about his situation. But he was a major guy in D.C. So now Ears to Christ and Andre then hooked up with him. I guess they banging so tough. Old boy Kurt Bones is like, look, man, you guys almost, I've made a fortune off of you guys in a month. I'll just turn you guys over to the plug.
Right.
And I believe the two plugs that he turned them on, one was a Colombian connect.
Okay.
And the other one
Big
was,
in the 80s.
another one was, a guy by the name of Alpo Martinez.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, but what you just said about the 80s, oh, how the mighty have fallen. In the 80s, there were lots of black guys who had direct Colombian connections.
Right on.
No Mexican middleman.
Mm-hmm.
And
Because that's all you used to hear about is my Colombian connect. My Colombian connect.
Right. I mean, because the Colombians, wanted to cut everybody out to deal.
Right.
The 80s was crazy. The Colombians were like, shit, who's selling the stuff? The black guys. So why do we want necessarily a Dominican middleman or Cuban middleman? Or what would come to be mainly now when the Mexicans organize themselves, the Mexicans to be a buffer when we can, it's called in business being vertical. We can take it directly out the ground. Well, even though the Colombians actually get it from Peru and Ecuador, mostly Peru. Cocaine isn't really grown in Colombia. It's
right.
But Bolivia and Peru is where it's grown. But it is processed in Colombia.
Okay.
Or the majority of it is processed in Colombia. So anyway, the Colombians were dealing directly with a lot of black guys right here in Detroit. New York, people had direct access, which meant the price went. Guys like Demetrius had Colombian connects, right?
Right.
Well, these guys, shout out to Spencer Holloway, brother from back in the day, who's sitting down right now. We're going to talk about Spencer's. Hopefully, he'll be getting a break soon. But back to the story. So now they're hooked up. They've been introduced to Alpo Martinez. They've been introduced to the Colombian. They're just doing their thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
These guys have become street legends in DC, right?
Right.
But this is the part I want to talk about. So I think this stuff is going on. Ears to Christ is like 15, 16, 17. The brother Andre RP is maybe went to college, so he had to be 4 or 5 years older than him.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a story that I just found fascinating. So Ears to Christ is 15 years old. He's got an apartment out in Maryland, right outside of D.C.
Okay.
They're not paying the rent. They come to get an eviction. He's being evicted because these young men, despite all... Anyway, what started over an eviction, the sheriff coming for an eviction,
Mm-hmm.
he is rated at 15 years old. He has $1.5 million in cash inside of his home and 20 keys and 20 of them things.
Ooh.
20 bricks. At 15, 1.5 million in the 80s, which is, 3 million, probably 2.5 million today's money, easy.
Mm-hmm.
20 of them things. 15 years old. So I want the audience sometimes when we be hearing these stories,
Wow.
man, it's not making excuses, but we all try to go back to being 15 years old and think about trying to manage your life if you were 15 with 1.5 million in cash and that kind of access to the bag.
Mm.
And of course, this is where it becomes a deadly mix, because you hear the story that my man Ears to Christ be telling, and it's a situation where he's sleeping with this other homie out that was there, this man who all become street legends, Big Head Gary. They sleep, it's a bunch of high school shit. I'm sleeping with the cheerleader who's sleeping with the quarterback who's sleeping with the basketball star.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is, they're playing a life and death game, a real grown man game with teenager mentality and emotional maturity. So you got millions of bucks on the line, but the young men involved in this stuff, at 15, you can only know so much about life.
Yeah.
And they're sleeping with young ladies who are 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, who only have the maturity of a 15, 16, 17-year-old young lady. And there's all kind of little schoolyard games going on between these guys getting money, where they're sleeping with this broad says she's pregnant from this other deal player. Just all the same shit that went on at your high school. Except it's happening with these guys with the backdrop that they handling millions of dollars.
Right. I was gonna say just throw the Scarface backdrop in the whole situation.
To your high school dynamics.
Right, to a high school dynamic.
And so that's the part again. So when we be talking about this stuff, but the crazy part is, this kid catches a case. He ends up, him and his man Dre end up losing 1.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I had $5,000 in my pocket. He's like, when they busted in the place, I was telling him, I can pay the rent. But just think about the idea of having 1.5 million and you get busted because you behind on rent.
Man, come on.
You gotta hear it. You gotta check him out. He's all over.
Wow.
We don't hate around here. You can check out my man Ears on Say Cheese TV.
Yeah, big up.
That white boy who got a big platform.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can check him out on that too. Our white Jewish friend who's got a big platform. You can
Yes.
you can find his interview on that too. But a lot of them would be thinking about why so much money come out the streets in our community and it ain't nothing to show for it. Unfortunately, when the 15-year-old is the one in your community with the 1.5 million in cash, it's gonna end up getting squandered. And this crew, him and his man, seem to be much more mature than most. I mean, they bought some nice whips. I mean, they was buying Benzes and stuff. But considering the kind of money they were handling,
Right.
not really.
Yeah, and I told you a minute back. I don't know if you ever got a chance to check that episode out of Miami Vice.
No, I got to. I gotta
Man, it's an episode. If anybody's out there that Miami Vice fans, check out The Good Collar. That was basically this story in a nutshell. 15-year-old. Well, no, he was 16 to be fair. He had a stretched Lincoln limousine, mega rich, millionaire, obviously.
Right.
2 girls in the back seat, and then Crockett comes up to try to score from him, and then he's like, talk to the man. It's definitely, they had their ear to the street back then.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it was a phenomenon. The 80s.
Yeah.
The 70s saw the creation of the urban kingpin, and the 80s saw the creation of the teenage urban kingpin.
Yes.
Which brings all of
Because all the kingpins had gotten locked away.
the disorder, because 15-year-olds aren't supposed to have 1.5 million.
Got 2.
Okay, so with that said, you want to take a break, then we'll finish the story?
Yeah.
Back to it. So yeah, man, as we were saying, so crazy absolute antidote again. I suggest everybody check out my man Ears to Christ. We need to reach out. I really, when we get some things settled early next year, I'd love to reach out to him. We can go out to DC.
Yeah.
I'd go out to DC and talk to the man. I'd fly him.
Great interview.
I'd fly him into Detroit. Yeah, he's worthy. I mean, I follow this stuff and this guy ever since I started checking out his content. I've always found it compelling because, again, like we were discussing, like with my brother, shout out to Eddie Baby down there in Florida. Some guys, when they telling their story,
right,
you just know they live
they're
it.
the real deal.
Yeah,
you know
this guy. You can't act
Right.
when he's spitting his game. You can't act that.
That's Eddie Baby.
You either was there and you did it, or you wasn't and you heard about it.
That's right.
And you can tell he didn't hear about it. That he lived it.
He was in it.
He lived it. So it gets real. So they've met Alpo. They got the Colombian thing. All kind of street politics is going on. Him and this man, get that fight. They take the hit. They lose that 1.5 million because the rent didn't get paid. They lose their 20 bricks. He 15, so he only does at that time 4 months on this because he's a minor. His man Andre get their game back going. They restack back up, and they start doing business with Alpo.
Okay.
He goes on, tells a little story that that they was moving more than Alpo. He's like, I thought you were supposed to be a big fella, kingpin. He's like, and they'd be going to try to buy 50 joints, and Alpo would be like, I only got 33, and he'd be like, but I thought you was, see, you ain't what you say,
right.
You ain't what, see, like streets blowing you up bigger than what you is,
right.
And Alpo began to catch some feelings because they dealing with this Colombian who, of course, is giving him a better ticket than what he can.
Right.
So now he in his feelings.
Yeah.
He in his feelings. Yeah. And they sleeping with his man's woman and all kind of, again, some real high school kind of shit. But tragedy would beset this situation. Again, you guys really need to go and check out the full story, and I encourage you to, because we do not hate around here. But the long story short of it was, they had decided, Andre and Ears had decided they was going to take their bag and go out to California, get involved in the rap business.
Okay.
They was sitting on like, they had re-upped, they were over $1 million in cash, still had 25 things. And his man Dre, Ears says his man Dre told him, look, I'm going to shoot this one last move. I'm going to spend this $270,000 just so we have a little extra working money for this California move. So I'm going to holler at Alpo. And Ears say he told him, man, kind of fuck him and fuck that. We good. We don't really need it. But he was like, Dre was the one calling the shots. And so he tells him, man, look, if you're going to go meet this guy, he's talking about Alpo. He's like, make sure you come get me. Of course, his fate would have it. He went to meet Alpo by himself. He didn't bring his man with him. They rob and kill Dre, take the $270,000. And he has been on a personal mission since then, of course, to avenge his man's death.
Right.
So when they're like asking him about how did you feel when Alpo was killed, he was like, I was happy, but I was sad. I mean, I'm telling you, this guy's a real street guy.
Right.
He's a real street guy.
I couldn't get to him first.
That's exactly what he said. He was like, I was happy, but he was like, I'll be honest, man. He's like, I was running up, once he got out, I was running up to New York. I was camping out. I was like, he's got a story about that after the shit that he had bumped in and found out that Alpo and Alpo's main hitman, muscle man Wayne Perry, were in his nightclub.
Okay.
And he was pissed at his crew because they didn't give him the heads up they were there. But anyway, when he finds out where Alpo is at, he goes to get his AK, camps out like on top of an 18-wheeler for like 6 hours.
Oh, wait.
Ears was serious about Ears. And he was like, man, I'm waiting.
Whoa. He's
like, I'm just waiting. I sat on their van for 6 hours. He's like, them niggas didn't come out.
That reminded me of your man Rooster talking about, I just wish.
Rooster, yeah, we had a killer there. Our security at one of our store, the old school guy. Rooster,
rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Rooster. Rooster killer. Rooster was real hardcore. When Pops got in that trouble, Rooster was like, I can camp up, I can set up on top of the courthouse. I was like, oh, fuck, Rooster, oh no, don't say that. Do not say that. He got a little wife. Rooster was similar style. Rooster was about his.
Oh yeah, Rooster was a trip. He used to be at the store. He's like, hey Lou. I'm like, yeah. Hey, you need some guns. You need some guns. I'm like, well, I don't really need none right now, Rooster. No, man, I'm gonna show you some guns.
Hey, let me tell you something. This Pops used to say, niggas is crazy. They be playing crazy. They ain't really crazy. Because we had some security problems before Rooster came and started being at the store. Once Rooster came to the store, we had 0 theft issues.
Oh, man.
Because niggas knew he ain't here to sell outfits.
The first day I came to work in your establishment was the first day I met Rooster, and truthfully, I didn't really meet Rooster. I walked in, and there's this man about 5'3", He's standing in a corner with a gun taller than him. And I said, "Oh, okay, this is different." But I felt safe. But I felt safe.
He made everyone felt safe at work. That was Pops doing brother Gregory Starks. They had robbed him.
Mm-hmm.
And when I told the old man that we'd had to stick up at the store, he was like, "Joe, don't worry, we got something for them. Don't worry about that." The next thing I know, he was like, "Junior, my man Rooster gonna start being up at the store. You ain't gonna have to worry about them niggas no more." And yeah, and Rooster would be so disappointed that nobody would
break in. He's like, "I just wanted."
So that's the way your man Ears was.
Yeah.
Ears just set up on top of the AT wheel and he's like, "I dealt with Alpo and them niggas come out. They all about to, they gonna learn today. They gonna learn today." But then when Alpo's paths never crossed, and then when Alpo did his 30 years, he still was on the mission. Like, no, I got to settle up. I got to settle up for my man.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating story. Again, so the thing is, the question is, I think the world of Dame, so I'm sure Dame will do right, and they'll figure it out. Ears spin on the situation is, how can you do a paid in full 2 unless it's based in DC, and the dramas of himself, Andre, Alpo, the whole DC New York phenomenon. So I don't know, and he threw out a kind of an olive branch to Dame and said, if you want to get together and do something, we can get together and do something.
Yeah.
But either way, whoever does it, if they do it together or separately, again, just another fascinating story. But again, the 15 with 1.5 million and 20 joints. I know how I behaved at 15 with 50,000.
Man, come on.
1.4, oh boy, it would put trouble. It would have been trouble.
Debauchery.
I mean, so anyway, yeah, fascinating story. Ears to Christ, man. Check them out.
Yeah.
2023, gonna definitely reach out to the brother.
Check that one out.
Yeah, check them out. Yeah, it's a fascinating story out of DC, man.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that is that. That is that. Paid in Full 2, DC, New York. It's coming again. The mainstreaming of the hustle.
Okay.
More content, more movies.
More content, more movies.
And speaking of such,
Oh yeah.
are you familiar with the Surviving El Chapo project?
No.
Okay, our friend, good people at G Unit Production, how you guys doing?
What's happening?
Curtis 50 Cent Jackson is doing his thing, and salute to and shout out to him and those good people at G Unit.
Yeah, big time.
Guys have not checked out. They're doing some stuff with the home team here, blowing money fast.
That I did check out. Okay. Oh, that was classic.
The docuseries about the homie Meech and the homie T and that whole BMF family thing. But anyway, yes, Surviving El Chapo is a podcast.
Okay.
That 50 Cent is going to be hosting himself.
Okay.
In conjunction with the Flores twins. Now I know Al, so check out.
That's what that was about. Okay. Okay.
Check out. Shout out to my man Al Prophet, his channel American Dope, and also shout out and congrats to another one of our business associates, Scott Bernstein, and what he's doing with blowing money fast.
Yes.
Over there on Stars. But yeah, so 50 Cent got this new thing coming out. Our space is just, this whole true crime space is just exploding. So it's going to be a podcast called Surviving El Chapo. It's going to have the Flores twins. The Flores twins were basically El Chapo's principal American distributors.
Okay.
They were working directly with the Sinaloa cartel and one of the other major cartels, but definitely Sinaloa and El Chapo. These guys had spent time at El Chapo's home. As the dirty game that is played, they actually ended up testifying against El Chapo.
Okay.
Wow. They're talked about in a lot of urban hip-hop songs. Fat Joe has done some stuff about the Flores twins. DMX was personal friends with them. They were based in Chicago. And Al, again, I was saying, Al Prophet and American Dope, he did a lot of stuff on the Flores twins. He did a whole series on them, so you guys can check out. If you want some backstory on who these guys with the surviving El Chapo is, check out Our Profits American Dope. It's got a lot of stuff on the Flores twins. So I was watching, 50 was talking about this coming up, and it's a crazy story how the intersection.
Okay.
So as it goes, 50 says that, you know, like how Rockefeller, they all had the Rockefeller chains, right?
Yeah.
Well, 50 had did the same thing. He had bought people who got down with him these G Unit pieces, right?
Right.
So one of the guys who has this G Unit piece, I don't know if you're familiar with, back in the day in Chicago, they've torn them down now. They were the Cabrini Green projects.
Yeah, I've heard of the Cabrini Green Club. Yeah.
rough part of town.
Yeah, that's the South Side, right?
Yeah. One of his members of the G Unit team decides to go to a party.
Oh, just on in well. Okay.
Decides to go to a party in Cabrini Green with his iced out G Unit piece. Well, he left the party, just not with his chain. They did, which, if you know about Cabrini Green, the fact that he was allowed to leave the party,
that's saying a lot.
he was still a very blessed man.
Yes, he was.
He just was minus a medallion and a chain when he left the party.
Why don't you run that on me?
They definitely thought that they would leave him with that so he wouldn't have to worry about keeping track of that chain. So you need to let us hold that for a minute.
Right.
Let me hold that for a minute. So they take the chain, and I guess whoever had took the chain from him, they're thinking it's this. Now the flip part of the story is, as 50 tells it, he didn't want to pay insurance on the real piece, except for his piece.
Okay.
So he had a lot of Fugazi G Unit pieces made that he would let the crew wear.
Okay.
And they'd keep the real iced out G Unit pieces in the safe.
Okay.
So, old boy was relieved of a Fugazi G Unit train, but the thieves don't know it, nor does he. So the thieves who then took my man G Unit chain, thinking, who can afford to pay for this? Who can we hit this quick lick with? They know of these two Mexican cats, the Flores twins, who are moving the crowd and got the biggest bag in town.
Okay.
They take the chain to the Flores twins, who check it out. Obviously, they know a little bit about jewelry. And they're thinking, though, they're looking at it like, this chain ain't right. This medallion ain't right. But they like, somebody gonna be looking for this chain. Because it's too nice of an imitation for it not to be somewhere not really connected with G Unit.
Right.
So they throw a couple dollars. They tell the guys, look, man, this chain really ain't right. But if you go a couple dollars.
Okay.
You know. Then they take the replica, reach out to some people they know, because again, they were doing business with, or they were not doing business, they were familiar and social acquaintances with guys like Fat Joe and DMX.
Okay.
They get in touch with some of 50's people at G Unit and be like, you guys missing a chain and a medallion? And that's how the Flores twins and 50
and they coalesced
was over this chain.
Okay.
And I guess the relationship continued. He brought up another interesting thing from a show that we both followed and did some stuff. What city was Ozark based in when it starts?
That was what it was
Chicago.
Chicago. Oh yeah, at the very beginning, Chicago.
There's been at the very beginning,
Yeah.
Ozarks, because that's where the cartel.
Yeah.
That is actually all tied into why when they did do so many of these shows, because Chicago was, in particular for the Sinaloa and El Chapo's organization, Chicago was their point of distribution.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And 50 and his man Ebro was talking about that, and they actually brought up tied in the Ozark. They're like, wow, that's why in Ozark it was set in Chicago, and the whole thing was going down. So yeah, they were trying to keep it. So man, yeah, more stuff coming for the truth. Yeah, this thing, this genre that we do and are involved in, just continues. So again, yeah, I'll check out. I'm looking forward to checking it out.
Yeah, definitely.
Because Al did again some great work on the Flores twins and that. So it's a thing. So we good over there for a second?
We good for a second. We got about 13.
So yeah, and on that last, but we were talking about Scott and BMF series, Blowing Money
blowing
Fast,
money fast.
and they were talking, and it was giving me a thought. It was actually I was listening to Jeezy. Jeezy was on $1 Million Worth of Game.
Okay.
Great interview, by the way. This guy's really, really matured
man.
and aged.
Yeah, the things he's doing with real estate.
Things he's doing with real estate, the squashing beefs, as we talked about earlier, with Gucci Man, and just real grown man shit, not the clown shit that so many black men that are in high profile positions, and that it's about family, it's about future generations, it's about taking this bag and creating some generational wealth.
That's right.
That he's really figured out. So shout out to Jeezy. But anyway, obviously, in the day, Jeezy and Meech, and when BMF hit Atlanta, he was right there as it was all going down.
Yeah, right in the midst of it.
In the midst of it. In fact, it's a great song about that. Song 13 on this song, The Recession. Check it out.
Yeah.
Free plug for you, Jeezy. Call it your man one day. He was saying what really made the phenomenon of BMF and why the whole blowing money fast, and why that it was two parts, and it was just kind of interesting. That one, Atlanta, as Meech and the crew had got to Atlanta had really become solidified as the hip hop capital of the world.
Right.
And with that, of black culture. But that Meech brought, shout out to the home team here, and this is Jeezy quote, and I just agree with it, that what made him special in Atlanta was he brought the Detroit flavor to Atlanta.
That's right.
And when he said it, I thought, that's really accurate, because the way they performed, and Lord knows, is what they used to call it, the greatest show on earth, they clowned. But here in Detroit, it wouldn't have stuck out that much because we clown.
Yeah.
When brothers here, when they getting it, they will let the world know they getting it.
Yes.
And even Atlanta is a bigger city than Detroit, but the flavor of Detroit and our opulence is truly worldwide. And there's actually data to support it. Do you know that for over 20 years, Detroit was the #1 seller of Maury alligator shoes in the world?
Come on.
So even though New York is 10 times bigger than Detroit, we still bought more gators in Detroit than all of New York.
I mean, late great Notorious affirmed that fact.
Snake pink gators, my Detroit players.
Yes. Yes.
Hudson's, you remember old Hudson's?
Oh, yeah.
The Hudson's first salon at Northland was the country's #1 first salon. Not any place on Rodeo Drive, not any place on Fifth Avenue, not any place on the Miracle Mile in Chicago, but right there at 8 Mile in Greenfield at Hudson's, but nobody's selling more mink coats.
That's right.
Than them. Wow. Because that's how we do around these parts.
Yeah.
So that was insightful, and it was. That's what was the special mix when they brought that Detroit flavor down there with the hip hop of the whole hip hop world, seeing what that Detroit flavor looked like when it's on full display.
Yeah,
which
boy.
is what them boys put it on full display.
Yes, they did.
They gave them something to talk about, and they could rename Detroit that. Detroit from 1970 to 1995, a.k.a. blowing money fast.
But in blowing money fast, we got a particular little hit off of.
Yeah, if you look at episode 1 of Blowing Money's Fast, they do, it's right around the 14-minute mark.
Yep.
And they're doing a trilogy, or like they're going through some photos, and Scott is talking, Scott Bernstein is doing the narration, and they're doing some backstory, and they are showing photos of all the heavy hitters that kind of were leading up to BMF and Meech and T's rise. And there's a photo of Demetrius Holloway, R.I.P.
Rest in peace.
There's a photo of Frank Nitty Usher, R.I.P. And then there is, where is it at? It is that photo right there.
Yeah.
That photo right there is shown on Blowing Money Fast, the BMF's docu-series. So yeah, they're in the montage,
Yeah.
or rightfully so. So yeah, shout out on that. That was a good look.
That was a real good look.
And okay.
Oh, I was just gonna say, on that picture, wanted to send a special shout out to Charles Coleman, who's revolutionized the Bluetooth portrait. Hit up Charles Coleman. I don't have his social media. I'll put it on the screen, but check that out. He hooked that up for us.
Yeah, shout out. Thank you again for that, brother.
And we never did really give him his props for it, and then point it out. It just seemed right.
No, that was a good look, Lou. That
Big
was a
time,
good
big
look too.
time.
So yeah, that was a good look. You guys watched Blow Money Fast first episode. You'll see the photo displayed there on the program. And there's some other guys from the home team who are gonna be presented soon on there, but we'll wait for them to do that. 'Cause
Yeah.
we promise not to.
Yeah, we can't really divulge too many of these.
divulge, but as soon as those episodes air, we definitely will give you guys that inside look that only we at Big Boss Filmworks Motown Mafia podcast can do. And again, I hope you guys please hit that like, share, and subscribe button.
And that notification bell.
So yeah, man, a lot. This thing is just, man, we're gonna be in they could be doing soap operas. They might be 5 years from now. There just might be a whole soap opera series of content about the likes of our ilk, right?
I'm telling you.
I can see it. That's where we're headed with this.
Big time. I mean, it's already happening.
It is.
I mean, stop and look at what's the network? You got Tubi. Tubi's populating.
By the way, Motown Mafia available on Tubi and Amazon Prime. Yeah.
Shout out to Tubi.
Yeah, so definitely can check us out there. See the doc. Motown Mafia Part 2, speaking of it, it's going to happen. We are starting the pre-production process for real. All jokes aside, 2023 Motown Mafia Part 2. We're going to let y'all know what happened in detail that only we can do, and with the footage, some never seen before footage in this format. What happened to the Fat Man and Pops after they did their time, what was going on with the two families when they were in the joint, what happened, and the timeline. I think it'll be good for the audience, especially some of the younger audience, because as we start to move into the 80s and the 90s, the characters, whether it be Demetrius or Ed Hansen, or so the Motown Mafia story really starts to intersect with all these names that have now just become household names for people who follow this stuff. The Demetriuses, the Ed Hansers, what was going on, Chambers, Shout out to the Chambers boys also out there. It's been a minute.
Big up.
Yeah. So it's a lot, bro, Lou. It's a lot.
Man.
It's a lot. Coming soon next month. This month. Well, it'll be next month. Tomorrow will be this month. Next month.
Yeah.
Patreon, gonna have some exclusive content for you guys.
And making the mafia.
It's coming. The guys got the whole backstory. It's gonna be a real good setup to check out, so that when you do see or go revisit Motown Mafia, the documentary, the story of Eddie Jackson and Courtney Brown, when you see the making of the mafia, and how we started off first to make a movie and then ended up with the book Memoirs of a Kingpin's Kid, available on Amazon, and just all the journey, man.
Yeah,
right. I'm looking forward to seeing it, because I just remember more and more about the journey.
Definitely.
Atlanta,
Life is truly stranger than fiction.
Yeah, we were just looking at old white folks' book, and it reminded we were down in Atlanta with, shout out to DJ Taxi, Richard Jennings,
right?
Down with Taxi at the Bronzeland Film Festival, and run into the legendary Pimp White Folk, and white folk like, oh boy, I knew Eddie and your daddy back on Hancock when it all first got started. White folk famous. White folk name ringing like dope bells.
Big shout out to white folk.
Big shout out to white folk, yeah, man. It's been a lot, but let's get episode 57, man. The count is going. We got to think of something. We got 57. We got 43 more before the century mark. We got to think of something big to do for the 100.
Yeah, big
or
time.
even the 75th. But again, appreciate you guys out there, man.
Yes.
We're gonna keep this thing going. We need to talk about 32 46 Davison, West Davison, Vinyls Apparel. Please check them out. They are an official sponsor of the Motown Mafia podcast. Hottest apparel in Detroit. Mention anything associated with Big Boss Filmworks or Motown Mafia. And again, that is 3246 West Davison, Vinyls Place. Right next to it is a great place to run out for little events or any of your hookah desires, and that is Blazing Hookahs. One more time, and not the last time. That is 3246 West Davison, Vinyls. Please check them out. You good, bruh?
I'm good, man. Check me out, Flyers Plus Graphics, for any of your graphic needs. If you are a content creator and you kind of like what I've done with these thumbnails, hit me up.
Holla at your man. All right, it's your man, CRB Jr., Louis Stevens, Big Boss Filmworks, Motown Mafia Podcast, doing what we do. Love you guys.